We already had first-hand knowledge of the work of Kikuya from Rob McClellan, but this invitation to lunch also included the opportunity to personally meet Dr. Stanley Topple, the orthopedic surgeon with the vision for Kikuya. A car full of representatives, including Jonathan Miller, our senior pastor, Ruth Stotzenberg, who's sitting at that back table. Give us a wave, Ruth. Who's our Director of Christian Education. And Mr. Bob Rourke, who's also here. Bob and Lucy. There they are. Lucy is a physician and also a member of the Board of Trustees of Medical Benevolence. But we went over to Morrisville to attend that lunch, and we were very stirred by it. Dr. Topple helped us understand orthopedic care in Kenya, or maybe I should say the lack of it. He encouraged us to dream his dream of a fully dedicated orthopedic hospital and challenged us to step out and to travel to see his vision in person. 3 from our church traveled to Kenya the following June. Kikuya Orthopedic Rehabilitation Hospital is in East Africa. East Africa is comprised of Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania, and is geographically very close to Zaire, Sudan, Rwanda, Ethiopia, and Somalia. All African nations that have been in the news quite a bit lately. The new hospital and its related buildings are beginning to take form and shape on the horizon adjacent to the present General Hospital and Eye Clinic. It is located just a few miles northwest of Nairobi and is situated on 15 acres of ground that has been donated by the Presbyterian Church of East Africa. Dr. Stanley Topple and his wife Mia, who is a dermatologist, are Presbyterian medical missionaries, and they served the people of Korea for 25 years before returning to the United States while their daughters were in college. Since 1990, the Topples have been Christ's witness in Kenya, providing care for young and old, and also preparing the plans to answer the silent cries of thousands who are crippled and disabled. Kikuya Orthopedic Hospital is an example of the incredible work of the Presbyterian Medical Benevolence Foundation, which is a real well-kept secret in our denomination. MBF has been the third world medical mission arm of the Presbyterian Church for over 30 years, and it operates more than 60 hospitals in over 30 countries. Kikuya Orthopedic Hospital is a place where every imaginable debilitating diagnosis and deformity will be treated. Kikuya is a place that has burned an indelible image in my mind for the care that it provides in the name of Christ through our denomination and for the people who give that care. Kikuya is the oldest mission hospital in Kenya. Without exception, mission hospitals in the third world are the places of the best medical care, and they are also known for their leadership in the area of community health care services and the training of healthcare workers. Now, there are many more details that I could tell you about our trip, but we have with us this morning 2 very special guests who are here to reveal their experiences. Mr. James Buruganya is here to share the fire from Kenya. He has been in the States since last November as the mission guest of Reverend and Mrs. Thomas Lovell from the Spanish Fort Presbyterian Church in Alabama. James has been traveling to Presbyterian congregations to speak about Kikuya and Dr. Topple because he has a story of a life transformed by the team at Kikuya. James is sitting right at this table, and I'd like to invite him to come up now.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. First and foremost, I would like to thank each and everyone here. It's quite exciting to see, the smiles on your faces. And I will tell you something first. You are the people who mission. Today we are here because you came here, and I believe if you are not here, then this could not have been possible. I would also like to thank the First Presbyterian Church of Morristown for inviting me together with Mr. Sonnenberg to come and share with you about Kikuya Hospital. Also, I thank you, Carol, for being able to organize my mission committee to make this possible. Mine is to share a story that intermingled me with Kikuya Hospital. I'll just tell you a bit of myself and then tell you about Kikuya Hospital. I just came from the central part of Kenya, and that's where my parents originally came from. And that was in early 1970s. And in early 1979, they moved to the city center, where my dad got a job in the city, and my mom was still picking up coffee. And in 1970, the same year, 1979, I lost my dad in a car wreck. And so we were left with my mom to take care of us. And so during that time, taking in consideration that my mom was earning about 60 cents a day, so, our education was just like, it was at stake. And so, by God's grace, we were blessed and we got scholarship, that is education scholarship, through Save the Children Foundation. I'm happy that some of you here have been familiar with Save the Children Foundation, and I'm not only a child of MBF, but also a child of Save the Children Foundation. So I went to school for the next 8 years, which I was very active in both my studies, my extracurricular activities, and I played soccer at the national level, and I was also a swimmer and qualified for the alternate team for African Olympic in swimming with the Kenyan team. In 1988, something tragic happened to me. I lost my mobility through a soccer injury. And after the soccer injury, I developed something called ankylosing spondylitis. This is a situation whereby your hip just degenerates and finally it fuses together. So I lost my mobility within a matter of 6 months. And I was hospitalized for 2 years without any solution, There's nothing which could be done. It was all gone, just in a blink of a second. And I stayed like that for the next 4 years when I went back to school. But something interesting happened during this time. I was in an elementary hostel, and I shared with small children. And that gave me a lot of love, because I don't think I could have made it through school if it was not of the special, the special love I had from the younger children, because they really assisted me in so many ways. And sometimes I had even to separate them because they all wanted to assist me at the same time. And actually it ended up in conflict. And so it was a very interesting moment for me. I was also introduced to a disabled home called the Mori Cheshire Home, which is part of Lona Cheshire Foundation in the UK. And I got us the interest to work with handicapped people, which I call a blessing in disguise, because it was, it came through my life as an aspect of my injury. And so I learned new things, and it was a blessing. It was just not a tragedy. It was something that God wanted me to learn some new things. And after my education in 1994, I was looking forward now to go to college. But here I had a big obstacle, and the obstacle was my health. I didn't know what to do until we were referred to Dr. Stan Chopo. At the time, when we were looking for medical assistance at Kikuya Hospital, they didn't have a medical theater facility that would carry out hip replacement. And the only thing Dr. Stan Chopo would tell us is, we can help you, but we don't have the facilities. I'll send you to a friend, and I hope something will work out. And so I went to a private hospital called Nairobi Hospital in the city center, and I saw a doctor there who was friend of Dr. Santoko. And he said, okay, we can assist you, but it will cost you 17,000 US dollars. And there was, I just felt like the ground would open and I would sink at the same time. Because that was utopia to me. You know, it was just far beyond what I could raise. And my mother at the time was earning 360 US dollars. And that's what she's earning today, 360 US dollars a year. So when we talk in figures ranging in thousands, there was no hope. So we went back to Dr. Stantopon and he said, we cannot give up hope, we have faith, and I have a strong feeling that God is going to bless me through an organization that I've been hoping for them to fund an operation theater for us. And so what happened is, in 1994, Medical Benevolence Foundation sponsored a 3-room operation theater at Kikuya hospitals and put in the facilities necessary to carry out this kind of surgery. And there my hope and my prayers had been finally answered. God works in a mysterious way. And in 1995, I saw Dr. Stantopon, and he told me, now we are ready and I think we can do a double hip replacement for you at a cost of only 1,000 US dollars. With the help of my brother's sponsor in the UK, they were able to raise about 500 pounds, which is equivalent to 1,000 US dollars, which they sent to Dr. Stantopon. And I was, in 95 May, I had my first hip replacement, and in 95 August, the second hip replacement. But just look the interesting factor here. I'm having a double hip replacement at a cost of 1,000 US dollars, as compared to this private hospital that needed 17,000 US dollars. It's just amazing, you know. It's a phenomenon that, you know, if we look at it, it would mean that thousands of people in my circumstance, you know, who have my problem and who had my problem would never get treated if Kikuyu Hospital was not there. And that's how Kikuyu Hospital comes into my life. The most striking thing about it is, since Dr. Stantopon came in Kikuyu Hospital in early 1989, and since his arrival to Kikuyu Hospital, dramatic work has just taken place. The quality and the standard of orthopedic care in Kikuyu Hospital has just become fabulous. And Dr. Stantopon has had strong visions to create this big orthopedic hospital that will cater for the needs of about 150 million people from the East African region. I mean from Kenya, Somalia, Sudan, Ethiopia, Rwanda and Burundi, and Ethiopia, I said Ethiopia, so, and Tanzania. And in case of any kind of, in this population of 150 million people, in case we have an orthopedic problem, they all depend on Kikuyu Hospital. And therefore Kikuyu Hospital has sort of become a messiah to the people, because most of the public facilities have actually decayed down due to mismanagement that we have had within our own personal government, and lack of funds, although I don't believe so much in lack of funds, but it is, you know, the lack of proper management. And so this hospital has just become sort of like, you know, the savior to all the people having medical problems, and due also to the crisis happening in our neighboring countries like Somalia, like Sudan, where we have the war between the north and the south, like Rwanda, where we had the genocide not long ago. And all these people have been brought in to Kikuyu Hospital through the United Nations, seeking for treatment. And therefore Kikuyu Hospital has just become such a significant body in the East African region that matters a lot. However, there's one thing I would like you to know, is that Kikuyu Hospital would not have been as competitive as it is today if it was not with you people. When I look at you, I see a lot of love, a lot of compassion, a lot of care. You are the people who have made this possible. You have given a lot of your time, you have given a lot of your donations to Medical Benevolent Foundation, and it is through that that Medical Benevolent Foundation has been able to coordinate with Kikuya Hospital and bring the necessary kind of facilities which have made this possible. Today, I would not be able to stand here and walk again if it was not of you people and many others in the Presbyterian Church who have made it possible. And I'm here to say thank you, because there are many thousands and thousands of people who you have changed their lives, but they cannot be able to come here and say thank you. But it's a big blessing that God has been able to bring me all this way, 10,000 miles away. I never knew you, but I was 10,000 miles away, and somebody made it possible for me. You made it possible, and it was an aspect of teamwork. And it has always been my feeling that the Lord would like to create a mighty force of committed Christians that would enable, would accomplish His medical and spiritual plan for man to live abundantly. There's a quote in the Bible which says that, Christ came on earth to make people live abundantly. And I believe you as Christians have been able, to make that possible. And I can only pray for you that the Lord may continue to inspire you and to encourage you to continue with your noble endeavor. I've told people this, and sometimes it seems something, enormous, something that it's almost impossible. But I've always believed that even if something is impossible, with the Lord it is certain. And I believe you, as a congregation, you have done a lot. And I believe you can do still a lot to help many thousands and thousands of people who through you their life can change greatly. This comes from our hearts, and we thank you very much. Our words cannot fully express our thanks to you, but just understand that you share a very special place in our hearts. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your time and love with us. Thank you.
Thank you, James, for sharing straight from your heart. I'd like to introduce now Vance Sonnenberg. Vance is here with his wife, Nina. They live in Matthews, North Carolina, but they're here from Ohio, and they've been on sort of a whirlwind trip visiting family and relatives because they're on their way back to Kenya next Thursday, I believe. So Vance has had a distinguished career with Union Carbide Corporation. He has lived throughout the world and the U.S. in different positions. With Union Carbide, the Sonnenbergs have 3 sons and 5 grandsons. So they're leaving a lot behind to go over to Kikuya and finish up this project, but I'll let Vance explain all those details.
Good morning to each of you. Great to be here. James, you're kind of a tough act to follow with that story. And I really should, I think the first thing explain, I am not a patient at Kikuya Hospital. Despite the fact I'm carrying a few wounds, I had a little growth up there that needed to be removed, and it was. And I'll go back to see the doctor next Wednesday and get on a plane and head to Kenya on Thursday. So, but it is really great to be here, and I bring you greetings from Kikuya Hospital, Stan Topple, and all the folks down that way. And it is a real honor that Carolyn called us, invited us to come, and I'm proud to proclaim that Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior. And my wife and I are extremely happy to be here with you. Tell you just a little bit about ourselves. Carol mentioned that we're natives of Colorado. We grew up out in the eastern plains of Colorado, and went to a little school. Well, we've known each other forever. Nina moved there when she was in the 5th grade, and we were the typical stories. High school sweethearts, got married while I was in college, and I joined Union Carbide and had a fantastic career with Union Carbide. Spent 30 years with them, moved to 11 different locations during that 30 years, and at the end of 1986, for lots of reasons, decided to do something a little different with our lives. Along the way, we had raised 3 sons, and 2 of them are engineers, and one of our sons is a Methodist minister in Portsmouth, Ohio. You move around a lot. A lot of people say, how can you do that throughout the world? I'd do it again tomorrow. I would not even hesitate about it. One of the key things in our lives has been that I usually went ahead to a new location, and the first thing I tried to do is find a church. And when the boys and Nina came to live there, the first thing I did is say, boys, this is where we'll be going to church and become as active as we can. I think that is a very important part of your life. And I cannot tell you any dramatic story. I cannot remember a day when Christ was not a part of my life. And we now live in Matthews, North Carolina. I'm a partner in a real estate development firm. We make subdivisions out of farmland, as it is a growing area of this country, and have 2 great partners that allow me to travel a great deal and support me completely when I've gone off on these foreign mission trips. Tell you a little bit how we got involved in this project. In November 1993, Stan Topple and Mia Topple were coming to Charlotte to talk to a number of churches, and we were asked if we would host them in our home, and we agreed to. And they came in from Atlanta. We visited with them a while, went to church, had a dinner like this, and Stan gave a story. We went home and visited probably till midnight. Got up the next morning, they ate breakfast, and we're getting ready to leave, and Stan said, you know, Vance, I've been praying a lot the last few weeks, and he said, I've been praying for somebody who might be kind of semi-retired, maybe he's got a little management knowledge, a little construction knowledge, has a wife that could be a hostess to visiting people. And he said, you know, I think the Lord answered my prayer last night. He said, how about coming to Kikuya, Kenya, and help us build a rehab hospital? And Nina and I looked at each other and said, that sounds like a great idea. We'll do it. On there, but we've got to work out the details. So we went down to Kikuya, and we scheduled a trip through Medical Benevolence Foundation, and there were 10 of us going. And the night before we leave, we had a representative, Tom Stewart, who had just been to Haiti, and the doctors told him he couldn't travel. And so they said we would be without a leader for that period of time, but we could manage. And so we flew to London, and we're standing in the waiting room at Heathrow Airport to get on the plane to go to Nairobi, Kenya, and there was a fellow walked up to us and said, are you the Sonnenbergs? And we said, yeah. And it was Rob McClellan, sitting over here, and he led us.
Looks like Presbyterian.
He led us down to Kikuya, Kenya, and we spent a couple of weeks with Rob and his group and traveled throughout Kenya. Most of these pictures that I put on display over here come from the hospitals. Kenyatta is the main hospital in Nairobi, then Tumutumu up near Nyeri, Kenya, and then Chogoria are the different hospitals we visited. Rob's group came back to the United States. Nina and I stayed on for a couple more weeks and looked over hospital plans, looked at the land we were going to build on, and said, yeah, well, we can work it out, let's do it. And so we came back to the United States, but we made a commitment to Stan to head up the project, but we just couldn't take the position to go live in Kenya for a couple of years. And so we have organized a team of volunteers, and we have 7 couples, including Nina and I, that are all pretty much in a position like we are, and we take turns and rotate through Kikuya, Kenya 2 to 4 months at a time, depending on what it is. And these couples are from throughout the United States. The couple down there now is from Beaver, Pennsylvania. They have a couple that have spoken here, I know, Spence and Gail Radnick from Webster, New York, who Rob helped recruit, and they've helped us on the project. They have to be living down there now, helping with the finances of the main hospital, and may even stay on for another year with the main hospital to do that. We have a couple out of St. Louis, Missouri, that's coming down to replace us, Stu and Linda Ross. On there we have a placement director from Auburn University, Frank Vandegrift, that's coming. We recruited the president of Montreat Anderson College in Montreat, North Carolina, of Cy Vaughn, and he's gone down. So that it has absolutely been amazing, the resources that have come forth to help us with this project. And so next Thursday, Nana and I will get on a plane and fly to London, back down to Nairobi. We're going to live in Kikuya at the hospital for the next 3 months, and we will manage the project from there. We do it by every day almost because of email, which one of the modern technologies has given us that it has really made the project relatively easy to do, and we've accomplished a lot, I think. Kenya is a country that's about 84% the size of Texas, and English is a common language. Swahili is really the national language, but you have absolutely no trouble communicating in Kenya. I have no problems at all. Everything is conducted in English. If you were to talk about one of the problems of Kenya, in 1960, the population of Kenya was about 7 million. If you look at it today, it's about 30 million. And so if you take in a period of 30 years, the population has quadrupled. You know, think of where you live. If in 30 years the population quadrupled, you can imagine a lot of the problems that you would encounter. You know, it's located right on the equator, about 5 degrees north and south of the equator, has an absolute perfect climate. On there, Kikuya is about 6,000 feet in elevation, so it never gets hot there. 80, 85 degrees is as warm as it ever gets. In the wintertime, which is when we'll be going down there, it will go down to about 42 degrees. It's about as cold as it gets. They say they have 40 feet of topsoil. They get about 36 inches of rain per year in that area, so they can grow anything. You know. Unfortunately, the rain does come in a couple of seasons, and you have some pretty dry weather while you're there, but humidity is in the 20 to 30% range, so a really ideal climate to live in. About 60% of the people of Kenya profess to be Christians. So you talk, why should you go to Kenya? And there's a lot of reasons. I've worked a lot around the world. Johannesburg, South Africa, Harare, Zimbabwe are locations that I've had in the past. And so that's part of the country appeals to us, part of the world. But certainly if you look at the Bible, all you got to do to go to Matthew 28:19, it says, "Go then to all peoples everywhere and make them disciples." And you can certainly do that when you go to a place like Kenya. If you go to Matthew 25, verses 35 to 40, says, "For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink." And we might answer, "When did we see you sick or in prison and go to visit you?" The king will say, "I tell you the truth. Whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers, you did for me." So I think that biblically is a sound basis why we should go to Kenya. I'm going to switch off of this and turn on the projector and show you slides. I'm not going to use the mic unless I need it. Holler if you can't hear me. There shows the map of Kenya. On there you show the dotted line running through the equator. And you notice where it's located there. Mount Kenya is right almost on the equator. You notice Nairobi, and then just below Nairobi is Kikuya. And that's where we're located. Then Shigori and Tumutumu, the other hospitals that I mentioned there. And if you see the Rift Valley, this is largely the Serengeti area. And that's where all the animals are that you see. And I certainly encourage anyone, if you go to Kenya, make sure you include a trip to the Rift Valley, the Serengeti, on your plans. On there. This time, when we're down there, Nana and I hope to go down into Tanzania. We have visas for Tanzania, and we plan to go up Mount Kilimanjaro, where we're down there. You know, it's the highest mountain in Africa, about 19,200 feet. Mombasa, Stan Papa runs clinics down at Mombasa on the Indian Ocean, and we went down there with him the last trip we were in Kenya. This is a picture of downtown Nairobi. You see it as a pretty modernistic city, and that tells you a lot about Nairobi. You can virtually get anything you need in Nairobi. May not be as easy to obtain as you do it here in the United States, and of course they operate on the metric system, not in inches and feet as we do. These are just some scenes that we've taken as you go around Nairobi, see the goat riding in the back of the truck. As it's going away, the lady carrying the basket. Very common scene. They use a lot of wood for cooking. Somewhat difficult to obtain, and there shows a lady that has been out and gathered the wood that she needs for her fires in her home. There's a picture that always fascinates me. This is the way they carry babies. And I stand at the hospital and I'm amazed at how those ladies put that baby in that sling and put it on her back. And I have never seen a baby carried like we would carry one here in the United States. There's a little boy, looks like he's eating some beans, and a lady must be grinding something there on the stone behind. This is a picture, and this is out very close to Kikuya. Nan and I walk a lot out there, and when we unloaded the bed, the guy on the right is a furniture maker who made that bed for us. Just a quick other point in there, though, hanging on the line at the left, that is our clothes dryer. This is a picture of thrashing wheat in the fields there. You also notice all the maize, corn growing behind it. This is probably the worst scene I have seen in Kenya, and that is a slum area right near Nairobi. And I think about, I live in North Carolina on about 2.5 acres of land, and they say that is the area that was enclosed there, no water, no sewer, and it is estimated that 6,000 people live on those 2.5 acres. So not a pleasant scene to remember. This is an aerial view of the Kikuya Hospital. This semicircle down here is part of the University of Nairobi, a campus that they have. This area up in here is a business school. And then this area and these buildings right here are the existing Kikuya Hospital. And you know, it has 180 beds, is what is in the existing hospital. And this is just land that is used to grow crops around the hospital. And then we own down this land along this roadway and up here and across. The Presbyterian Church of East Africa has given us 15 acres. And I will be showing you some more slides, and particularly the first slide will be taken from about here, looking back onto that land where we're going to build the hospital. The English gave the Presbyterian Church sometime in the 60s about 880 acres of land there, and the Presbyterian Church has done a great job of keeping that land, and they envision building a number of things there, and they even have a plan that says someday there will be a university located in that land beyond where we're building the hospital. This is the Church of the Torch, and anyone who visits Kikuya, that's where we attend church, was built by the Scottish Presbyterians in 1929. We go to a service there at 9 o'clock on Sunday mornings. There's an English service. There will be about 400 people probably in that service. And then at 10:30, they will have a Kikuya Swahili service. And that church will be totally packed. I would estimate probably hold 600 to 700 people. And there will be a lot of people sitting on the grass outside because the church is overflowing and they can't get in. Any groups that come to visit us, we encourage you to participate in the worship services there, and we make arrangements for speakers, and particularly the Kenyans are extremely talented musicians, and they really love music that the Americans bring down there. This is the entrance to the Kikuya Hospital, and you see the wrought iron gates there where the security guards are. Notice the dirt roads, and the sign over there at the left tells the operating hours of the hospital. And you've probably seen Stan Toppel, but that is Stan and Mia Toppel standing in front of the hospital there at Kikuya. This is the Dorothy Toppel Memorial Chapel, and on my last trip to Kenya, that is one of the main projects that I helped construct. And that chapel will hold 140 people. We can seat 140 people. Was given to the hospital by the Toppel family as a memorial to his mother, to Stan's mother. on there. That is where we try to begin our day, and we hold devotional services every morning there at 7:30 before we start work. And the songs are all sung in Kikuya, Swahili, and the speakers and numbers, I give devotions periodically, and in that case I'll speak in English and then they will translate into Kikuya, or vice versa. Kikuya speaker, there will be a translator that will speak in English for us. So that is a real gift the Topple family has given in this kind of service at the center of life, Kikuya Hospital. This is just some views around the hospital, but this is the maternity ward. And you don't, that hospital is not one big building, but a series of small buildings. And that is the maternity ward, holds probably about 40 beds. And I think last year there were like 2,400 babies born at the Kikuya Hospital. This is the outpatient area. You see the sign there. And if you were to go all the way back, that would be what we would call the emergency room for the hospital. And Mia's dermatology clinic is just to the right. Prior to having the chapel, we conducted the devotion services there in that little lean-to area at the hospital. This is the administration building, and over on the right-hand side is the x-ray unit where people go to have x-rays taken, and you can just barely see the corner of the men's ward. This is the laundry and the kitchen, and that's where all the meals are prepared for the hospital. It's in that little van on the right-hand side comes from Franklin Graham's organization, Samaritan's Purse, and they send us down a lot of medical supplies and medical equipment. And that's a van that's come in there, and we just put a little roof over it and kept it for storage. This is a picture that was taken on my first visit to Kikuya, and you can see they're doing the laundry for the hospital there. So you can imagine to do all the laundry for 180 beds that's associated with it, washing it there in those ceramic basins is quite a job. I'm happy to say during our last visit there, this is one of our projects we completed, and those are the washing machines that were installed. Those were given to us as a gift of the First Presbyterian Church in Jacksonville, Florida. And we plan to equip our new hospital with these same type of machines. There is the dryer on there, and you see we overflow the lines, and in that case, had some laying on the grass. We have put up additional lines since that time. Also, you can imagine with all that hand wear, there's a lot of wear on the equipment, so on those linens, and so there is a repair facility close by. This is the operating theater, particularly what James talked to. Our first visit, that was the operating theater that operations were done in was quite limited for what it could do. And the Medical Benevolence Foundation gave the money to construct this. This is the new operating theater, operating room that was under construction. There are 3 complete operating suites in that room, and you notice we even built kind of what I call a widow's walk up around the top to get light in there, so that in case we have a power failure during surgery, it doesn't go dark until the emergency generators can be kicked on there. So this is a patient that has been to orthopedic surgery in that, and now is being transferred back to probably the men's ward or one of the other wards there at the hospital. This is a picture from the eye clinic, and you know Christ is there as the center of that clinic, and without question, this is the best eye clinic in all of Africa. On there, it is run and sponsored by a German organization called Christian Blind Mission, CBM, and I have tremendous respect for what the Germans have done there and the help they give us in there. If you go in any morning at 8 o'clock, you will see 200 to 300 people that are lined up to go through the eye clinic. And they are there, of course, to receive treatment, but they're searching long-term for things like glaucoma, cataracts, and other eye diseases. But they are also the neighborhood vision workers, or lens crafters of that area. And you hear about Lions Club glasses. If you ever need to, or give them to the Lions Club, we get boxes of those down there, and they're categorized. And many people come in at 8 o'clock in the morning, When they leave at 3, 4 o'clock that afternoon, they're wearing a pair of glasses that were prepared for them at the hospital. A tremendous group. This is just a picture. That's Stan Cockle, and that happens to be my wife, Nina. They're on the left doing a tour of the hospital with some visitors. That is the head nurse, the matron, as she would be called. And you notice all the other series of buildings that are there. This is Stan Cockle, and we're at the orthopedic pediatrics ward. And the fellow that's leaning against the rail there is a Muslim from Nairobi. He has just brought a busload of soldiers in from Somalia who were injured in the war up in Somalia, and they brought them to Stan for treatment. Some of them, it's been 2 or 3 weeks since they were shot. And so you can imagine the severity of some of those injuries on there. My office, when I was there the last time, if you just went up that little ramp to that doorway, that is the office that I worked out of at that time. This is Stan. It's just a number of views. Stan is working on a patient there. Looks like he has lost both legs. And then these are just some other views of patients that are there in the hospital. There's 1 cast, there's 2 casts. And there is a deformity of the feet, and you see a tremendous number of deformities like that, and that person just walks on the side of that foot. And they do a lot of surgery there at Kikuya to do that correction of that. This is deformities of the hands of the little boy, and that's typical treatment of patients there at the hospital. This is a picture taken at Kenyatta, which is the general hospital in Nairobi run by the government, and that is in the men's ward, and they're putting a cast on a patient there in front of everybody. I asked them that day how many beds did they have in the men's ward, and they had 54. I asked them how many patients, and they had 86 patients there that day. So that gives you a little view of another hospital. This is taken at an orphanage about a mile from the hospital called Dagoretti, and there are about 250 handicapped children. Many of them have been abandoned there, and if you've ever heard of a physical deformity, you will see it at that orphanage on there. And quite frequently from the hospital, we will be in contact with them, and they even ask some people like from your church to come down, and maybe we will do a project with those people to help them. It is run by a lady, been there 30 years. Her name is Mrs. God. This is the staff of the orthopedic hospital, and you see Stan Koppel right over there, and that's the new operating theater after we got the shrubs and everything completed. And point out this fellow here, this is Dr. Marilla, and he is a local Kenyan that we're particularly trying to train to make sure that when Stan comes back to the United States, when he retires, the hospital will be in good hands. This fellow here is the guy who puts on casts, takes off casts, and that's a nurse that I know pretty well, and I'll have to be honest with you, I cannot tell you the duties of those other people, but that is the existing staff that we have. Then in addition, for the general hospital, there is a staff of about 25 doctors, or about 5 doctors for the general hospital, and I can't really give you the number of nurses. There's a number of nurses that work there, and of course, we provide housing for all those people at the project, and you will see a major part of our project is to build housing for those people. This is a missionary orthopedist from Korea. And his name is Mr. Che, and he has come down there for 3 years with his wife. And you can see there he was building a big leg for a big man on there. He is one of the most dedicated Christians I've ever known. He does not speak a word of English, but he is happy and does a tremendous job for Stan there. And this is one of his patients that is there, Mr. Che's wife. They live close up, but again, doesn't speak English, but her and Nina would go to the grocery store every Wednesday in Nairobi. This again is a picture of Dr. Marilla in the doctor's lounge, the fellow that we expect to run that hospital in the future. This is my wife, Nina, and she is at the pediatrics ward. She works every day there and does a number of things. We have 5 grandsons, and so she has a lot of practice of being a grandmother. And I'd say that's particularly one of her duties. The little boy that's there with one crutch, we called him Tiny Tim. He came from someplace out in the bush country so far away, no one spoke his language. And he had a major problem with one of his legs and underwent surgery a number of times while we were there. And Nina would try to comfort him as much as he could. He knew I belonged to Nina, so he liked me also. And there, we wondered what would happen to him when we left him home. And fortunately, someone picked him up about 2 days before we came home. So we hope he's living somewhere out in the bush country, living a good life. This is a baby. You can see he has a cast on the leg. He's being treated at the hospital. And the mother lives right there in the hospital with them while the baby's being treated. On there, this is the house on the right where we live, and that's Nina out there, and those are typical neighborhood children. And our house is pretty popular with them. Nina likes to give them a number of things to color and different things that she does with them. And, she even has letters from those children periodically here in the United States. This is the maintenance department. And the young engineer there is a guy, Hank Hutchison, from Raleigh, North Carolina, that came down for a year of mission duty after he finished. His prime need in life, he was an Atlanta Braves fan. Wonder what the scores were from the Atlanta Braves game. But he spent a year down there as an engineer, helped us organize the maintenance department, and then decided that he wanted to change his life. He went back to North Carolina State, took the courses required for pre-med, and is now studying to be a medical doctor at the University of Texas, and plans to be a missionary doctor the rest of his life. So quite a touching story. These are the storage tanks that we store water. Those are 3 40,000-liter tanks. They've been there for probably 50 years. One of the problems we have down there is the shortage of water, and we really did a lot of work the last time there. We're really blessed. We have 3 aquifers in the borehole or well that we drilled, and really had a plentiful supply of water. Unfortunately, it had a little manganese problem in it, and the last thing I did when I was there was engineer a system for treatment of that manganese, and I'm anxious to get back there to see if my system is still running on there. If you want to talk of a model of what we're trying to build, that's it. That is a hostel that CBM has built for the doctors and nurses that come to the eye clinic. And you see the typical construction, stone, the roof. We frequently build a courtyard if we can, which we think adds a lot. Also gives you some security and a little better atmosphere to live in while you're there. So we're using that kind of as a model for a lot of our buildings. This is the raw material to build the building down there, and you see what it is. It is a pile of rock that has come out of one of the quarries not too far from Kikuya. And we take those rocks, and there you see I've laid a ruler down there, and we make blocks out of them, 8 by 8 by 16, just same as we do cinder blocks or cement blocks here in the United States, 4 by 8, 16, and there's how it's done. We hire people, pay those people about $2 a day, and they're very skilled craftsmen. As you see, he has a hammer and chisel, and all you need to do is tell him what you want. And that chapel that was built, a lot of complex angles. They can put those angles in those blocks just the way you need it. And then we use the chips to build roadways and things like that for those blocks. This, and if any of you have been in industry and had an OSHA inspection, you'll appreciate that. That's a ladder. And there it is. You might imagine that gives some of us engineers a few nightmares. You see that this is typical scaffolding. That you see that's the chapel as we were constructing the chapel there, but I'm really showing you the scaffolding. On there, this is where the Sonnenbergs live. Last time we were down there, that was a pretty nice home. It's called the doctor's house. It has 3 bedrooms, a living room, dining room, kitchen. You notice the windows are what we call burglar proof. They're small grates. They can't get in. Even the doorway has a steel grate on it. On there, the dogs come in the house, and all you have to do is feed them. This is a picture of our living room. And that furniture was built by the same guy who did that bed I showed you there earlier. Pretty nice living room, concrete floor, fluorescent strips in the ceilings, what we call soft ceiling. is what it is. That collage of pictures there on the bookcase is pictures we take with us to remind us of the United States. This is the kitchen. On there's no hot water at all in the kitchen. We have a 200-gallon tank in the attic that we store water in, and then there is a water heater that produces water for the bathroom. If we need hot water in the kitchen, we use an electric tea kettle that's sitting there, and then you notice the little stove has 2 burners that are electric and 2 burners that are propane gas. And when the electricity goes off 3 or 4 times a week, if you're cooking, you just switch on the gas, cook with gas rather than electricity. And there's a refrigerator, a small, probably 8 cubic foot refrigerator on the left, and there were some cabinets that don't show there in the picture. Now this is down on the new site. This is taken from that corner, and you see looking back, and there's the well house where that well is located that I talked about earlier. The maintenance building would be off on the right. And this picture happens to be taken in 1994, and we were down there thinking about doing the hospital, and we held a little service of dedication there with the plans laying there. You can see I'm standing there with the blue blazer on at the right, and I'm over towards the left. On there. Now these are scenes of construction. There's how they mix concrete. On there they just pick out a spot on the ground and throw it down and mix it up. And obviously we think there's a better way of doing that, so we bought a cement mixer, and we use a cement mixer now as much as possible. Runs 220 volts is what that runs off of. This is Stan Toppel out on one of the building sites. They've also just done the footers and getting ready to do the floors before long. This is a doctor from Goldsboro, North Carolina. And Goldsboro has built one of the houses down there. They furnished the funds for it, and they're doing the footers there. That doctor did the first knee transplant that was ever done in Kenya when he was down there on that trip. And there are the walls. This is a 2-bedroom duplex, and there's the walls of that house. You see how the stones come up, and we even tried to build that up to the window ledge. It's called gray stone. Those above it are called yellow. And when they're really dressed up, you can notice the difference in color. Ring beams, a critical part of construction there, and that's Bill Steele, the present project manager that I'll be replacing down there in a couple of weeks. Now there's the 2-bedroom duplex that is nearly completed. On there, that's the back side of it, and you notice the chimney coming out from the front. We have put fireplaces in those so you can have just a little bit of heat as needed. The roof is what we call IT4 metal roof on there, and that shows the metal roof laying there on the edge, and then again just some views of the duplexes. One of those duplexes costs US about $30,000 to build a 2-bedroom duplex. There's a maintenance building, and it's under construction. That's a 2-story building. On there's another view of it as it was originally built. You can particularly see there the roofs. We use truss rafters and purlins, and then use metal roofing over the top of that. On there's another picture. Actually, we're doing an expansion. We need a little more space, so we decided to double the size of that maintenance building. And there's an overall view. It looks almost like a house, but it is a maintenance department, and we're using it as storage as we go through this project. There's a picture again from kind of the hospital site. Looks back to where the houses are being built, and that goes up a little bit on a hill. It's a pretty picturesque view back there. There is the Korean house, and that's Mr. Che, the orthotist, and he's overlooked the construction of that Korean house. Stan Toppel went to Korea a year or so ago, and while he was over there, different churches gave us $100,000 for use there on the project. There is Frank Vandergrift. He's the project manager from Auburn University. He was a placement director at Auburn University. That's when he was on tour down there. And that is Donald, and he is the accountant that helps keep the books for us on the project. Now, these are some views that I just got these slides when I got up here last night. And that is of the patient hostel that is being constructed. And these are, the patient hostel is for people that need a few days in the hospital and then maybe a month in the area to do PT. And so we're constructing a patient hospital. On there, that's another view of the foundation. And then we'll be building a guest house or a training hostel also close by. That is a doctor's home, and you know, so it's a pretty nice looking home, and we're building that for Dr. Murillo, the person that we expect to run the hospital. There's another view of it, and you notice how we placed it in among the trees. That house is getting pretty well along. That is a septic system, and a pit that they've obviously built there. We use a septic system in all of our residences there. Now, this is taken in Matthews, North Carolina, and that is a model of the facility of the main hospital. That's one view, and then here's a little better view, and that is the building that is just starting right now, and I'll be particularly looking after the construction of it. That is a 2-story facility. The upper floor is for inpatients, and I will have a ward of about 20 men on one of the wings, and then over in the other building, another ward of about 20 beds, and that'll be for women and children. And then the lower level is where we will do the outpatient treatments, and there are some cast rooms that set there on the lower level. We expect to take about 38 weeks to build that facility. You can't go to Kenya without doing a little tourist activities, and that you see where that is. That is right on the equator, up at Nanyuki, and you notice the altitude that it shows on the picture there. That's Raphael, our driver that we had. That's Nina standing right next to him. You notice the altitude is 6,389 feet. I talked about how high it is up there. And that is the last picture, and that is the Serengeti area, and that's Simba. Lion, and he seemed to walk over there and said, "Hey, son, you're take my picture." On there. So those are the slides that I have to show you. I'll leave this up here. Anyone can see it that wants to. These are the 15 acres of land. That's that view right over here. The code is that if it has a light frame here, that means if it's just outlined, it's going to be part of the project. If it is hash marked, that means it's under construction, and that's the views you saw. If it's dark green, that means it's completed. You see a couple of the houses, the maintenance shed, the well house are finished, and these probably ought to be green by now. And then the areas in pink, and I haven't talked very much about that. There is a couple in Grand Rapids, Michigan, Bob and Marilyn Vanderveen, who have agreed to do those 2 buildings for us, and particularly a lot of groups and new people that come down there will work with the Vanderveens in the construction of that patient hospital and that training hospital. So they're a great group, and they have really kind of taken that apart. Bob and Marilyn are also going Thursday, same day we are, and they'll arrive down there Saturday, and they'll look after the construction of those 2 buildings, and I will look after the construction of the main hospital, plus a few other things that are going on. So that tells you about it, and one of the things I'm particularly proud of is all the people that we have involved in this project. And if you go to 1 Corinthians, the 12th chapter, the 6th verse, it says there are different abilities to perform service, but the same God gives ability to everyone for their particular service. And I think that has really been glorified in that project there in Kenya. That pretty well takes care of what I have to say about the project, and here in a minute we'll be glad to answer any questions that you might have, but I'd kind of like to conclude, you know, about the time we started getting involved in Kenya is when the movie The Lion King came out, and I'm a fan of Lion King, I guess having been in Kenya, and then also having 5 grandsons who like to see it pretty frequently, but there's a song in The Lion King called The Circle of Life. And the words of that song go that from the day we arrive on the planet, there is more to be seen and done than we can ever hope to do. And I think as you get older, you really realize that there is so much to do. In the circle of life, the important thing is to try to never take more than we leave behind. And that's what we're trying to demonstrate at the Kikuya project, that we leave a little bit more behind than we take with us. For each of us, we know that we have a God that gives us so much more than we can ever give back. And we're most thankful for that. Amen.
I'd like to thank you very much for your presentation. I am very thankful that some of you are going to be back tomorrow. We're going to hear just a song of praise before we are on our way. But before we go, could I ask this question? I was wondering about this. How many of you in this room have been to Kikuya? Would you stand where you are? Just so, if you have been there, let us just see how many of us have been there. Okay. Okay, thank you. Now, how many of you, there are some here this morning, who are going to be going this summer? How many of you are going this summer? Would you stand? Wow, okay. How many of you want to go to Kenya? We'll remain seated if you want to do that. But I need to be on my way. I do have a copy for those of you who are not in this church. We will put bulletins for tomorrow on the display table. There's a little video that Rob has. If you're able to stand around and visit a little bit, you're welcome to. There are a number of, there's a packet that we sent out to all the members of our church that if you're trying to extend the vision, you might want to consider that. The bulletin shows you one way that a church has tried to introduce friends and share the dream that we have here of mission, and you're welcome to pick this up. I also want to say how thankful I am to Carol and to Susan and to all who are on this committee of mission. They have been the heartbeat behind all of this. And